Hello, everyone. Surprise! I am not usually here of a Wednesday evening because ordinarily Wednesday evenings, my time is filled with the wonderful group chat on the Gilded group of all of the Blackbird Brewsters talking about different topics and different ideas or just visiting. But today is the day before Thanksgiving, and so everyone is pretty much has their handful with last minute preparations. We had one of our members come on and say, okay, I'm going to come home and I'm going to bake the pie and I'm going to clean the house and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I'm like, oh my, oh my. And since everyone seems to be in that boat, I thought, you know what, this is a good opportunity just to do a little bit of a live stream on YouTube, have something very off the cuff, completely unplanned, totally last minute, and just have a nice, relaxing time. Although there is something that has been on my brain for the past couple of days, and I'll get into that to a minute, but yeah, what a week it has gone by fast. I mean, I did all of my Thanksgiving preparations. The only thing I have to do tomorrow in order to be completely ready is stick the little casserole I made to take to the Thanksgiving dinner into the oven before we leave, and then zoom. We are off to the races. Man, there's just been so much to get done. And of course, the day after Thanksgiving, that's always a busy day too. That is my official decoration day when all of the Yuletide trimmings go up in the house and things are cozy and pretty and wonderful again. Oh, I absolutely love it. And I have not been able to turn my brain to serious subjects this week. And there's been a lot of stuff going on, especially on the cultural and the political front. You know that whenever there's a holiday coming up, the politicians are always doing something icky because everyone's distracted and not really looking. And I tried to keep my eye out for what was going on, but even I need a break. And hello to oh, please forgive me, I'm rubbish at names. Stygian Fox. Yeah, Thanksgiving is kind of an American thing. But we have it the fourth Thursday of every November, and it's essentially to celebrate the peace compact that was concluded by the Pilgrim settlers and the local native tribes, and also to celebrate their first successful corn harvest. And since then, it's become a tradition of just celebrating that harvest, the good fortune, and opportunity to take some time off to spend time with friends and families, eat a lovely meal, and just have some away time. Just have some time when you're glad for the good things in your life. So it's part of our culture now here in America. It's kind of a lovely thing. Oh, but on to what has been on my brain, what I have not been able to get out of it. Let's see. Oh, I am the third or fourth person to absolutely butcher your name in the same way. I apologize from the bottom of my heart. I truly do. If I hear your name a few times in a row and we talk more often, I promise I will learn to pronounce it fairly quickly. But until then, I must beg for your indulgence, and it's not intentional. Oh, Steen like Stein or Steen? Steen. Okay. Okay. Cool. Thank you. That is helpful. Yeah, I am terrible with pronunciations. If you have the misfortune of watching any of my Norse studies videos, I'm going to make you cringe, and all I can do is offer you my humblest and sincerest apologies ahead of time. I am I'm. It will take me time to learn. Oh, it takes time to get used to different pronunciations for sure. But yes, the thing that's been on my brain, and it's been coming up a lot lately in different conversations with different people. And what really struck me wasn't that it was any one particular person that was feeling this. It was just that it was different people in very different situations in life, very different issues going on in their life, but they were all feeling that same pressure. And I think it could be best described as a kind of disillusionment, or being confronted with your preconceptions, the premises upon which they've been operating, and realizing, reality isn't quite matching up to what I thought that it was. And I'm having to go back and reconsider. And there's a lot of reasons why this is happening for people. I think certainly the current astrological retrogrades, they are definitely taking a toll. And of course, depending on people's natal charts, some people are feeling this more keenly than others. And of course, if people have significant placements in some of the planets that are still retrograding, they are, of course, more likely to be feeling some pretty massive effects. But it is an opportunity to peer into the mental interior closet, look and see what's there, take stock, and just kind of reassess of say, okay, I thought the world was this way. And I have X, Y, and Z reasons to think perhaps that is not the case. Well, then you're confronted with a choice, and it's do you just kind of dig in your heels and say, "Well, I'm not going to reconsider a thing. I am sure that that everything that I thought before is obviously the correct thing, and I'm just going to stick with that, and I'm going to block everything out." Or you essentially have the other path, which is maybe I reassess, maybe I look at things again, and this is really scary territory. And I have been wanting to talk about this just because I do think this is an opportunity to remind all of us that there's a need for empathy when people are going through that. It's not a fun situation in life to be in, especially if it's over something serious. Some people are going through massive changes in their belief systems. Sometimes they're going through a disillusionment because we've seen what's gone on politically, culturally, not just in the United States. People around the world have been feeling this, but I'm from the United States, so that's the situation I'm more familiar with. I think perhaps a lot of us had on rose colored glasses for many years. I think a lot of us were very naive, and I count myself included in that, even though I've always been very skeptical of governments and I certainly haven't trusted them. There was still used to be in my mind that I really believe that there was a limit as to what they were due. That, yes, these are power mad people, probably of very poor character, but, they don't actually hate their own citizens. So, I always thought that maybe there was a line in the sand. After the past couple of years, I no longer believe that. And I know I'm not the only person who's in that particular position. And even if people aren't feeling that on the political front, they might think, oh, you really used to trust my doctor. But now that I've seen the way the medical profession behaves and they're wanting, to, push pills, or they're wanting to push various forms of, the pokey pokey medication that, we've been told that we're all required to take. And they're saying, they don't really seem to be interested in me. They're not looking at my medical history. They're not caring about me as an individual. They don't know me as an individual. If I go into the doctor's office, it's just whoosh, whoosh, in and out. I'm not even given the dignity of a number, really. They aren't listening to me. And it's this kind of the same story wherever I go. And so people are disillusioned. They're saying, okay, maybe I don't trust them. Maybe I have to do all this other research. And of course, when it comes to any topic we have to consider, I mean, let's be honest. When was the last time you heard a straight story from any institution, any at all, that just said, okay, here are the available facts. We are presenting you these available facts. And now we have people who have different assessments of these facts. And they have analyzed them in different ways. And they are going to present their views. And this is just something for people to consider and contemplate. We don't have that. We have pre-packaged narratives. And anyone who doubts that narrative, they try to force them to go down that. And if they don't, well, you're a bad person, or you're hopelessly ignorant, or there's something wrong with you. That's what you're told. And after a couple of years of being told that nonstop, I mean, it does grate on the nerves, and it just get to thinking, okay, well, where can I find information? I mean, there's a reason why journalism and being a reporter isn't actually a full-time job. It's because the average person does not have time to investigate every single thing that occurs on their own independently. I mean, we are all relying on someone to convey information to us. And when we have lots of grounds to doubt what they say, I mean, that's not a fun situation to be in. And some people find themselves questioning more religiously. A lot of people come to paganism and they have lots of different ideas in their heads, and they might think that they're coming with an open mind, but then they'll run up against a couple of concepts that don't fit into those preconceptions. And they'll say, well, it has to be this way because of XYZ reason. And I know those things must be true because I think they're scientific, or because they fit into the religious narrative that I was taught as a child. And, take your pick of explanation. But in essence, a lot of times what it comes down to, when it comes to these religious earthquakes that people struggle with, is that sometimes people were looking for an authority figure. They wanted one simple answer. They wanted it to be very streamlined and prepackaged. And they have forgotten that with paganism, it is exploration. It is about asking questions. It is about seeking answers and knowing that we are not operating with a very complete set of information. There's always going to be something new to discover. There is always going to be something to kind of reflect on and say, okay, so this original conclusion, why did people conclude that? Is there another way of looking at? It's about looking at things from multiple angles. It isn't about here's your doctrine, here are your practices. You will now say that you accept them, practice them, and that's just kind of that. It isn't about the destination. It really is about the journey, and that is a huge mental shift for a lot of people because if they are coming out of the mindset of monotheistic religion, or if they were very secular and they essentially saw the great big blob that is government as the authority, the idea that it isn't about getting the right answers, that it's about going through that process of refinement of your character, of your knowledge, of your heart, really, as you go through and try to discover what is, and you try to figure out, okay, who are the gods, who are my ancestors, what does my connection to them mean, what the spirits of the land I'm actually on. And this is particularly relevant for American practitioners. The vast majority of us in this country, our ancestors came from elsewhere in the world. So, we have that genetic lineage to these various ethnic groups all over the world. But at the same time, this is the land that we live on. So, what is that going to mean for us going forward? How is that going to make a difference in how paganism develops from one country to the next? That's a huge thing to wrestle with. And I don't think that should be undercut or underscored in any way. I think when people are struggling with these things, I don't think it's about attention seeking. I don't think it's about them not having put in the work. I mean, sometimes it is, but I mean, when the people are really feeling that struggle, and you can tell that this is really agitating their soul, then it isn't about any of these superficial things. It's about them having conflicting sets of reality in their brains, and they're trying to determine which is more likely to put them on the right track and which is leading them off into illusion. And it is important for us to break ourselves of our illusions, because as long as we keep our brains and things that are refutable, in ideas that have been shown to be false. And this is especially important for anyone who practices magic on any scale. If you are persisting on operating on a false premise, that's not going to turn out very well. The universe will correct you eventually, and it's much better if you catch that early on rather than letting the situation culminate to its full fruition. It is much, much better to be able to correct yourself, because by the time the universe does it or the gods do it, it's usually a bit rougher, a lot more straightforward, and your feelings are probably not going to be the important thing to soothe in that particular moment, because it's about wake up and smell the coffee. This is how things really are. This is what your actions have wrought. Look at it. Accept that this is what it is, what you have done, and realize that if you want to have different outcomes, you are going to have to sow different seeds. That's not easy. I mean, think about even a commonplace habit, like the way you fold the towels, just for a common everyday example. What if suddenly, for some reason, you were required to fold the towels in a different way? Well, how long would you just be on automatic pilot and, be folding the towels in the same way you were accustomed to doing it? It would take a little bit of time, and it would take, a consistent, active, conscious effort in order to make that change. Now, obviously, changing our spiritual ideas, or just shifting our worldview and opening our minds that perhaps the world is more complicated than what we have been led to believe, that's going to take a lot more effort than changing a simple everyday habit, because I don't think we realize how conditioned we are in our thinking. It's almost like pre-programming. There are things we don't notice because it was never encouraged for us to pay any attention to them. There are ideas that we were encouraged not to consider because, oh, well, that person is just crazy. Here's everyone else in the mainstream who believes this, and that's what you should believe too. It's difficult to avoid that pressure because people are raised in such a way, at least in the United States, to where they are constantly aware of other people's impressions. They are constantly encouraged to submit to group pressure, to peer pressure. And what that has resulted in is that there are fewer and fewer people who are really able to operate with an independent conscience, to really say, I'm not going to just do what everyone else is doing because they're doing it. I'm going to look at the situation as rationally as I can, and I'm going to form my own judgments. I am going to make my own decisions about how I am going to proceed. I'm going to try to look at the evidence that's in front of me instead of just accepting what I am supposed to think and what I am supposed to do. That takes a lot of character. And when you are trying to build up that character as an adult, it's so much harder. I think a lot of the terrible things we see in society, the people who feel completely isolated, the people who feel completely disenfranchised, the people who feel like there's just no purpose or meaning in your life, a lot of the seeds for that outcome were sown by, I hate to say it, but poor parenting of parents who were simply not instilling values into their children. I mean, we have the self esteem generations who were told that they were the best ever, they could be whatever they wanted to be, and this and that, and constant, never ending positive reinforcement, but they were never given discipline. They were never, said, okay, you were able to do this. That's a great start. Here's what you can do differently to get better. Or even more importantly, to say, you tried something, it failed, life will go on. You can choose to try again. You can choose to do something else. You can choose to do things differently. So many people from my generation forward were never taught those life lessons, and these are the consequences. People are doing the most outrageous things, and they're doing it for attention. And they're getting into wilder and stranger things. And I think at the bottom of it, they are just desperately hoping that someone stops them and says no. This is a very dangerous state of affairs because essentially what we have is a society of children who are looking for a parental authority figure. And in America, the whole premise of our nation is based on the idea that individuals are capable of self-governance. And I agree that is true. But that is a conscious choice that people have to make. And if they don't choose to make that choice, well, they leave themselves open to being ruled and led by someone else. And whenever you leave that opening for someone else to rule you, you will encounter volunteers for that particular job. That's one thing that really worries me about the monotheistic religions. They have a very top down hierarchical structure. They have their God, and he has his little order of things that goes on down to their individual level, and it's a pecking order, and they are, whatever is virtuous is what is as defined by their particular deity. It's very different for paganisms, just because our gods, they leave us stories, they let us see the mistakes, they say, okay, when people do X, Y, and Z, they have these bad consequences. Maybe the lesson is that someone who's able to look at these stories and analyze them, maybe you could save yourself some trouble. Maybe you could realize that if you start forming these patterns of behavior, it's not going to work out well for you. And so you can take responsibility for yourself and you can make better choices. It isn't about having someone stand over you and say, you must do this, you must not do that. It's about you taking responsibility. It is about that self governance. And it's also about a division of power. Various gods are extraordinarily powerful beings, far beyond what we can imagine. But there's no one deity that has it all. And that's really a strength of paganism. They're saying, people have different strengths. Even the gods have different strengths. They have different areas of authority. They have different areas of concern. And so that really sets up your mind for saying, okay, well, maybe in our own societies, we don't concentrate all the power in one place. We need to have, the people to pursuing their individual strengths. We need to use the right tool for the right job when we're addressing personal problems or family problems, societal problems, political problems, whatever the problem is, use the right tool for the right job. But If you have a monotheistic mindset, it's much harder to get there. Now, some people do. Anyone viewing my channel, you've probably seen some of my streams with Puritan View. She is a Christian and she understands the profound need to have a division of authority, certainly within political matters. But I would like to submit that perhaps she is the exception, not the rule. I mean, if you look at places like Gab, especially, or some of the more religiously focused right wing media, they are desperately wanting to have some kind of societal shift in the direction of their religious preferences. A lot of them honestly believe that would be the solution. They think that's where morality lies. I would say not. I mean, I don't think that it's moral for people to refrain from behaviors because they're afraid they'll burn in hell for it. What's moral is for someone to refrain from a behavior because they say that hurts someone, or that hurts me, or that leads to a bad situation. It's just not a good way to live your life. That's morality. Morality is about conscious choice, individual will, and exercising judgment and living with the consequences. Because let's face it, we don't always get things right, but we can certainly always learn from the experience. And when you are constantly going through that process of, I made this choice, it led to this action, now I'm looking at the results, you are much more likely to say, okay, I need to start working on these various things. But if you think that there's only one way to live, and that that it has to be that way, then you're not necessarily going to be looking at that same pattern of consequences. You're going to be perhaps blinded to it because, after all, if what you believe is virtue and that in your mind at least is beyond dispute, then you are not going to be looking at your behavior in the same way. It's like, well, I did the virtuous thing. I checked all the boxes I was always told to check. So if it's not working out well for me, it's not because my idea was bad or because I was misapplying my idea. It just must be persecution. Well, that isn't always the case, and it's leading to a rather dangerous situation in our society. And I'm concerned about it because pagans are a minority in the United States. We're a minority in most places of the world, and the history of monotheistic religions and honestly of political philosophies that place the state and essentially in the position of deity. They treat it as if it was a deity. It gets dangerous. They do not have encouraging track records. That the persecution, silencing dissent, refusing to check their premises. That's the consistent result every single time. I wish more people actually read the author Ayn Rand, particularly her novel Atlas Shrugged. I mean, she wrote a lot of things. Honestly, I think that her essays should really be required reading for high schoolers because she's been dead for many years now, but she was an immigrant from Russia. She escaped the Soviet Union. Very early days of that, she came to the United States and she just embraced Americanism. She loved the idea of the Constitution. She loved the idea of the separation of powers, and she loved the idea of individualism. And she actually coined her philosophy objectivism, which is all about the individual having to look at the world, inform their own judgments, and live with the consequences, and try to remove falsehood from their thought process. Of if you find out that something you think is not the case, then rejecting that thought and replacing it with something that you know to be factual or true. And there's a lot of power in her philosophy. Of course, like with any other philosophy, no one agrees with it 100%, but there's a lot of good nuggets in that. And I think it would be to a lot of people's benefit if they would give her a little bit of a chance and hear her out. Listen to her principles. Think about what this means when it's practiced, and think about what happens when it isn't, because you'll find plenty of examples of that in real time with real life consequences. But the reason why I draw attention to her novel Atlas Shrugged is because there's this one line. It was said to the main character that that essentially, when in doubt, check your premises. If you are confronted with a contradiction, check your premises. You will discover that one of your premises is wrong. And I think that is the test of our era, of being willing to go back and see, okay, maybe I was wrong about something. maybe I didn't have it right. Maybe I've been making my life harder because I believed this false thing not to be the case. Uh, and it's difficult. It's very difficult because we have low trust when it comes to the dissemination of information. And when it comes to philosophical and religious matters, there's all kinds of credibility issues. We do not have perfect information. We do not have a complete historical record. And, sadly, academia, instead of just doing their jobs and, reporting on what they've been able to find through their research, a lot of them are infusing their own political ideologies. They are trying to present the past as if it fits into their modern preconceptions. And it's disastrous. It's disastrous for everyone. And I think one of the frustrations that some people are confronted with is that they're left with a sense of, I have to do everything myself. I have to figure it all out myself. I have to start from ground one all myself. And to a certain extent, there is a certain amount of things that we do have to do for ourselves that other people cannot do for us. No one else can learn. People can present knowledge to us, but they can't make us learn it. They can give us information, but they can't make us meditate on it. We are never fully released from doing our part. And I think that's what makes the formation of like minded communities, whether it's the politically like minded or the religiously like minded, so vitally important. Because as much as we do need to hear opposing views and opposing arguments and consider them and just see if any of those arguments are exposing any flaws in our own thinking, as much as we need that, we also need to have some sense of community with people who do share our values, our beliefs, and our general view of the world and how we are seeing things and how we're trying to live. Because for one, everyone needs a little bit of understanding, especially now. We have all this talking going on in the world and very little actual communication, which is why you are starting to see more people trying to form actual communities, whether it's online or whether it's in the face-to-face physical world. We are starting to come around to the idea that we can't just operate like little atoms wandering through the universe, not connected to anything. It isn't healthy, and there's an end to that road. You can only get so far by going that way. At a certain point, you are going to need to converse with someone else, to hear what they have to say, benefit from their experiences, because oftentimes, even very new people, just because their minds are open and their minds are fresh, they'll connect a dot that someone who's been at things for 20 years realized, oh, well, that was a missing piece of my puzzle that I didn't realize before. And it is like trying to construct a puzzle. And none of us know what that puzzle ultimately looks like. And I think that's what makes this process of having to go back to the drawing board so inordinately frustrated. I mean, if you were given some puzzle pieces and let's say they were all the color red and they were forming this really pretty red rose, and then out of nowhere you had a blue puzzle piece, your first impulse might be, well, I mean, that blue piece obviously doesn't belong with this puzzle. Here I have a red rose. Why do I have a blue piece? But then later on down the road, you see, oh, that blue piece that belonged to a lake that was in a different part of the picture, and that the rose was only one part of that. And that's what it's like. Sometimes we do find out that things are related in very unexpected ways, or we start looking at broader patterns within different pagan traditions and saying, they're all latching onto a very similar idea. And I think there's reasons for that. I mean, I certainly do believe that there's a source of it all that set things into motion. I mean, you have to have that masculine and feminine principles rather, in order to create anything. So obviously there are first causes out there, but like any family that begins with its roots, that family expands, and I think that's true of the physical universe. Our world we know now is one amongst many. I think, considering the size of the universe, it would be very, very strange if we were the only sentient life out there. That would be, I just can't bring myself to believe that would be the case. Um, and even on our own planet, we have different animal family groups, and they're all evolving along their own lines. We have different tribes of people, and honestly, I think that's why we have different tribes of gods, and why all of the various myths that we have about gods essentially being the progenitors of the tribe are so relevant. I'm sure that if we could trace back the divine family tree far enough, we could eventually find, the original pairing. But what we have and what we've inherited so far are essentially, we have this particular family of gods, and we do have other families of gods elsewhere in the world, and all this and that. And and I think it's good that we compare them. I don't think that, every god of thunder is Thor. I mean, is it a possibility? Sure, but I think there's a reason why people who have reached out to deities that have similar jobs in different pantheons have sometimes come away with the experience of, those energies felt really, really different. I don't think I came into contact with the same being. I don't think that impression comes out of nowhere. And just like our own human world, we have more than one person in each profession. There's more than one person who teaches, more than one person who practices medicine, and so on and so forth. So it shouldn't be too surprising for us that there might be more than one god of thunder, more goddesses of the moon, and things of that nature. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't eventually, if we curlicue our way up, connect back somehow. I'm sure that they do, but we just don't have the necessary puzzle pieces, and that can be really difficult to make our peace with. But that's essentially all I really had to say this evening. Thank you so much, Steve, for hopping on and keeping me company for this. I really appreciate that. Anyone who's watching this later, which if you would be so very kind as to smash the like button, leave me a comment. Let me know about your own thoughts. Are you going through your own process of, if not disillusionment, but having to really reassess some of your opinions and saying, okay, why did I think what I think, and does that match with realities going on? Let me know, or come see us on Gilded. As usual, I forgot to leave a link in the description box. I'm very bad about that on the live stream. But on any of my other videos on my channel, there is a link in the description box. So if you click on that, it will take you to Blackbird's Brew on Gilded. And if you'd like to carry on the conversation there, please come and see us. We'd love to have you. But I think that'll do it for now. Bye, everyone. And for my fellow Americans, have a very happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. Bye-bye.